Welcome back. My name is Ken Himmler, and you might have gotten to know me over the past couple of years with the books that I've written all the way back to 2006, 2016, and now a new one coming out. One Wealth Map is soon to be released. Anyway, today we're going to talk about the one biggest mistake that you can make when you have a trust. Now, first off, we're going to make the presumption that you have a trust, and you're not going to go through life with just a will. Now, while some people may promote wills, attorneys tell you that wills are okay because they're simple to solve. Yes, if you maybe have, one house, one car, and one savings account with 5 grand in it or whatever it is, it probably isn't that big of a deal. You could probably do what's called abbreviated probate. But as soon as you start accumulating assets, a will create probate. That's the mistake most people make. It will create probate. And I'm going to tell you about the one biggest mistake that most people make. And it has to do with second marriages. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my grandfather and what ended up happening is because his entire estate, and he was a very wealthy man, and he died in the oh gosh, now 76, late 70s, 76, 77, somewhere around there. And he had accumulated quite a net worth between some businesses in Chicago, between a house there, house in Jacksonville, Florida. Make a long story short, what he did was he created a trust and he named my grandmother as the backup trustee. Now, my grandmother was very smart. And boy, you want to talk about a strict German grandmother? Boy, she would not let anything go. And she was very, very articulate. She was a master's degree, so she was no dumb bunny by any means. But the problem was is that no one ever explained the risk of leaving a trustee and an entire net worth to somebody as they get older without protective provision. So here's basically what ended up happening. My grandfather dies. My grandmother becomes the trustee. She controls everything as normal. However, between jockeying around between other family members and another non-related to me family member, meaning that they were not blood relatives, as well as online evangelists, she lost it all. I mean, every single dime to the point where when she ran out of money, she actually had to move in with relatives, going from wealthy to broke. Now, whatever happened with my grandmother, whatever kind of mental snap that she had where she thought it was okay to give it all away to other non-related people, or whether she understood really what she was doing within the online, or back then it wasn't even online, it was television evangelists, right? Like the Tammy Faye Baker kind of people. She gave it all away. It was all gone. Now, there is a little bit of a frustrating uh, point of contention for me because I keep this little running total of, hey, had I inherited that money when I was 16 years old, what would that probably be worth today? And it's probably just a little bit shy of $50 million had it all stayed intact. So, interestingly enough, I have a little, what would you call that? A buy-in, a incentive to make sure it does not ever happen to you. And I get people when I go to public speak, especially now. Now it's all online. I get comments, and one of the commonalities of the comments are, "Don't you wish you had the 50 million?" Well, in one tune, yes, I do. There's no doubt about it. I could put $50 million to really good work. There's a lot of charities I support. There's a lot of businesses that I would help grow. There's a lot of good that I could do with $50 million. On the flip side, had I inherited that money, I don't know how I would be today. I don't know if maybe I would be more relaxed and not as passionate about what I do. And quite frankly, one of the reasons I got into this business was when I was 16 years old and I lost and I knew that all that money had gone away. I felt like I was just an idiot. I was like, all that and my grandfather kept telling me about how he has sacrificed throughout his whole life, how he has given up things so that I and his other grandchildren could actually have a big inheritance. So there was always this, why didn't I understand this? Why didn't he understand this? He was great at making money. He was great at accumulating money, the nicest guy in the world you'd ever meet, biggest heart in the world. But how did this happen? Well, he went to his business attorney. And so as time had gone on, and I was 16 years old, and never forget this guy showing me this readout. And I know this company isn't there around anymore. It's called Combined Life. I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe I just haven't looked them up for a while. But it was Combined Life. And we're talking about, in the what would that have been? Early 80s, right? And this guy brings me this. It was weird. It was like a receipt that you get at, say, Walmart. It was this really thin piece of white paper, and it came out of this little machine that they gave to the combined life insurance agents. And he was trying to sell me a life insurance policy. No, no, it wasn't it. His name was John Ferlini. He wasn't trying to sell it to me. What it was is he had bought it, and he was showing me what he had bought. And then I thought, wow. So what it was is, on this little receipt thing, it shows you how much to invest or how much you could invest, and then the magic of compound interest. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, well, I don't have my grandfather's inheritance anymore, nothing to fall back on. So I better figure out how to make money. And I could either make money by going out and spending time, exchanging time for money, or I could start a business. But look at this compound interest. So the culmination of having just this deep, burning curiosity of, wow, this is really cool stuff, and just kind of falling in love with the numbers, and then just being so passionate on what happened with my father and his attorney. So get back to the story of the attorney. So the attorney is general business attorney, no will or trust experience whatsoever. But here's the disturbing, deeply disturbing thing about the legal profession. Well, let's contrast that. Let's say that you're a physician and you are, I don't know, let's say a foot doctor, right? A podiatrist. And somebody comes to you and they say, hey, listen, I have a brain tumor. Can you operate on me? Well, no. The podiatrist has no experience, no education. They probably won't even be permitted into the hospital because they got to get privileges. So the answer is no, the podiatrist cannot do brain surgery. The flip side, right? The brain surgeon cannot do foot surgery, right? So there's these defined disciplines. However, in the legal profession, the minute you get a law license, you can practice any kind of law you want, whether you understand it or not. All you got to do is hang your shingle. So, and also, I have learned that a lot of lawyers that have no experience in this area will use the same templates that you and I can get on the internet, and they fill in the blanks and go, here, it's coming from a lawyer. Doesn't mean they understand what they're doing, doesn't mean they understand how to design it. So I felt it was imperative that I become an expert at how people lose their inheritances through bad will and trust planning, because that's exactly what happened to me. And so I really learned inside and out, why did this happen? Well, here's the attorney drafted the trust, sent him along the way because he was a business attorney. And all of a sudden, now my grandfather dies. First, my grandmother, obviously. Now, listen, I don't have a medical diagnosis of my grandmother. All I can surmise, in my humble opinion, is that she lost her marbles. I don't know, could just, you get older. Sometimes there's dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever it was. Because as I was growing up, I always thought this is the sharpest woman. She is like, I don't want to say tyrant. Tyrant is strong. It was more disciplined and diligent. And she was just a smart woman. She taught me a lot of things about money, which means, how did she come to such a bad decision in what she did with the money? The only summation I can make is she lost her marbles, because she was a really, really smart woman. So he gave the attorney in the trust, because my grandfather obviously was not the expert on trust, gave her the unilateral ability to do whatever she wanted to do with the money, which isn't a bad thing until you lose your marbles. And then, if the trust is drafted correctly, you have what's called a trust protector. See, that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. They don't have a trust protector in their trust. The trust protector is also the person who can protect you against forced guardianship. Now, a lot of states have tried to clamp down on this. Unfortunately, it still runs rampant because con artists love taking advantage of this. There was a movie done by Rosamund Pike, and I can't think of the name of the movie off the top of my head. But if you look up Rosamund Pike, you'll see this movie. It's about how this is a true story actually, how she has scammed millions and millions of dollars by getting forced guardianship, even if you have a trust. Because if there is no trust protector or there is no default backup trustee, and again, you do not ever want to name a backup trustee to a child. I'll tell you about another situation. They can go into court and say, hey, please appoint me as the trustee of this person. So there are legal ways that you can protect this. It could be a pre-need guardian, it could be a forced trust protector. But the one mistake that most people make, I mean, they don't even know they're making it, is not having the right trust structure and backup sequence so that if you do lose your marbles, if something happens, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, I mean, it could even be a head trauma from a car accident, right? It could be anything at all. It could even be people that I've seen people where they go in for cancer treatment and the treatment itself puts them into a state that they cannot make very good decisions. And unless you have these protective devices put into your trust, it opens up the door for either A, if you're not sure what you're doing, people to steal your money, just signing it over. B, it could be like the Rosamund Pike character in her movie where she has a whole business around stealing people's money by getting herself appointed as a guardian. So, before I conclude, the number one thing you want to make sure that you do in your trust is make sure you have a trust protector. And sure, there's actually a good sequence. I would put into place three trust protectors. And here's why. People say, well, why three? I'm going to name my brother as the trust protector. No problem. And what happens is people will say, "Oh, I talked to my brother-in-law or my brother, and he's happy to be the trust protector." Well, what if he dies, becomes disabled, becomes incoherent, whatever it is? And the other thing I learned is your family will never really tell you that they don't want to do it. They'll tell you yes while you're alive, which makes you happy. But I will tell you this about 7 out of 10 times people say, well, name so and so as my trust protector or as my backup trustee. And then you die. They don't want to do it. And some of the reasons are it's a hassle. Sometimes it creates conflict with siblings. Sometimes, depending upon if you don't know what you're doing, you could become personally liable. Give you a great example of that. When I was in practicing in Sarasota, Florida, had this guy walk in, very successful chiropractor. His brother was also a chiropractor in his own office. They were still brothers. Mom dies, leaves the older brother as the trustee, the primary trustee. So what does the brother do? The brother invests in CDs, paying 5%. Well, during this time, and this was in the 90s, the market was going like 20% a year, right? And he refused to take it out of CDs. He also refused to hire professional help to insulate himself from the liability. So why did he come see me? His brother was suing him. Yes, that happens. Families will break up because of your bad design in your trust or in your estate plan because you can create interior conflict just by how you design it. And if your intention is to let the money do good things, then do good things with the trust design. Otherwise, if you have a faulty trust design, the money can cause more headaches, conflict, family breakups than anything else. So anyway, what had happened is the younger brother was suing the older brother because he claimed lack negligence on the trustee's duties. He won, and the client that came to see me, the older brother, he had already lost the lawsuit. He was asking me, "Is there anything else I can do?" I'm like, "Buddy, you got nailed, man. You lost the lawsuit." And the reason is that during that period that the market was going up, the younger brother's claim was, "Listen, you invested in 5%. Why?" "Well, I didn't want to lose money." You didn't, but that's not what a trustee's job is. The trustee is to do the best interest of the trust. And it's not always just to take the safest pattern. So leaving money in savings accounts and money markets and CDs or even low paying annuities does not fulfill a trustee's legal obligation to be a fiduciary. So he lost the lawsuit. And the difference was he had to come up with about 300,000 personally for just a few years of lost revenues, even because they did an assessment of, hey, if we did 50% bonds or CDs and 50% stock and a reasonable calculation, that's what we would have gained over what you just gained in the CDs. So just because you invest safely and just because you think somebody else is going to take on the job of a trustee, think again. We're not talking about hopeful or rose colored glasses. We're talking about 40 years of my experience of watching this happen over and over and over again. And you know what the usual excuse is? Oh, my kids would never do that. They would never argue. Oh, they get along perfectly. Yeah, you put a big sum of money between anybody, and it may not even be them. You know what it might be? Their spouses. With that in mind, the one biggest mistake you can make, not having a trust protector. Lots of other mistakes, but make sure your trust has a trust protector.